It comes just one day after a racist massacre which rocked the entire country. A gunman killed 10 people, most of them black, at a local supermarket in New York State. The suspect allegedly posted a statement expressing neo-Nazi sentiments. Political analyst Nico House has more.
There was a shooting in Buffalo, a mass shooting in a small supermarket, where 13 people were shot and 10 people are dead. The culprit was a young boy, just 18 years old, who supposedly put out a manifesto all over the internet detailing how he was trying to curb this quote unquote white replacement theory. Now, there are a lot of overflowing emotions, a lot of perspectives that should be heard here. But I think one of the most important ones, of course, is white supremacy is still alive and well in the United States. There is also some angles about this that I think should be at least discussed, because obviously I'm a black man. So Nazism, neo-Nazism, and all forms of white supremacy, I feel the need to challenge for some odd reason. Now, myself and many others have been talking about the neo-Nazism that's been taking place in Ukraine. In fact, some people have been alleging online that this guy was, at least in some part, inspired by a lot of the symbolism and imagery used in the neo-Nazism in Ukraine.
NATO is arming and training neo-Nazis in Ukraine's white supremacist Azov movement, who use the same fascist symbols as the terrorist mass shooter in Buffalo, New York.
Weird to see a lot of people praising neo-Nazis from Azov for 3 months 24/7 on here suddenly being outraged with another local neo-Nazi from Buffalo. They will go back to cheerleading for Azov tomorrow and tell how they aren't actual Nazis, and it's a difficult issue.
After the Buffalo shooting, I see liberals are back to declaring Nazis bad. Should be interesting how they explain how the Stalingrad black sun is a Nazi emblem on an American terrorist, but patriotism when worn by Ukrainian Azov soldiers.
Now, this 18-year-old shooter was allegedly inspired by Nazi symbols that are used by the same Azov battalion that are linked to the Ukrainian government, the same Ukrainian government that is claiming to have no affiliation with Nazism or neo-Nazism. But when people like myself and others, when we brought this up, we were met with jeers by the liberal establishment and even by much of the Republican establishment. We were called Putin puppets. We were called, Russian puppets, whatever you want to call it. That's what we were called. So it's been very, very interesting to me to see this mass shooting, an act of white supremacy, an act of what liberals would call neo-Nazism, being condemned, rightfully so, while we have members of the squad, members of Congress who would probably label themselves social justice warriors, sending tens of billions of dollars to neo-Nazis in the Ukraine. Neo-Nazis who wear Nazi insignias proud.
Meanwhile, a picture has emerged online showing an extremist manifesto which reportedly inspired the Buffalo shooter, translated into Ukrainian and sitting alongside the insignia of local radical groups. It's the manifesto of Brenton Tarrant, who killed more than 50 people in a mosque shooting 3 years ago in New Zealand. Examples of extremist views have featured in a number of Western media reports during the conflict, but given little further comment. One example, the BBC interviewed a soldier displaying a neo-Nazi emblem on his jacket, while the Sun tabloid newspaper showed a funeral ceremony but failed to mention an attendee clearly wearing another SS division emblem. Author and former US state aide Tara Reid believes Western media outlets are trying to whitewash neo-Nazis in Ukraine.
What that is a spin. And they're trying to spin it or dilute the fact that these neo-Nazis are simply far right or nationalists, and they're using words to do it. Just like using the words lethal aid instead of weapons. It's using words to soften or to change perception. So a lot of Americans are not clear that these are neo-Nazis, the Azov Battalion. The question for American citizens is, why are we poised to give $40 billion in weapons that will go into the hands of neo-Nazis in Ukraine? And you see right now on Western media, they're discussing gun control, they're discussing more censorship by social media of these extreme neo-Nazis' views, but they're not talking about the elephant in the room, which is that the US government and NATO are funding neo-Nazis in Ukraine, and that sentiment is spreading across the globe.